Hello, Clyde Park. We are starting our video series of reading missionary stories that we have on hand at the church to give us a sense of the missionaries' faith in various circumstances. We're experiencing a strange circumstance right now, and while we're sitting at home, I wanted to give us all an opportunity to experience some missionary stories. So I'll be reading one chapter per video through this series, and we are going to start with Shiro Kano, Faithfulness at Any Price. Chapter 1, Typhoon Boy. Ryu Kano clung to the arm of her 15-year-old son Shiro as they made their way down a busy street in Kyoto, Japan, one October night in 1926. Unlike everyone else, the pair were walking in the middle of the street. With difficulty, the mother held on to the sturdy young teen who quivered with more life and spirit than she had strength to control. The wild colt in him wanted to break loose. "Mother, why dodge carts and jinrikishas?" Shiro asked. "Let's walk on the sidewalk like everyone else." Ryu only clung to his arm. She could never let him loose within reach of the articles in the sidewalk bazaars. Too often his nimble fingers had slipped pencils, books, trinkets, even cucumbers into the receptive folds of his clothing. His thievery had brought shame upon the whole Kano family. But there was another reason for clinging to the arm of her rascally son. That very day, for the first time in his 15 years, he had asked to attend Otera, the Buddhist temple, to seek the good life of the Honorable Buddha. Ryu had all but worn her life away as she went from temple to temple, morning and evening, hoping to catch the ear of the great Buddha on behalf of her erring son. She sought solace in the splendor and glory of Higashi Honganji, the East Temple, its priestly procession, the incense ascending between golden lotus flowers on the altar to the massive, tranquil Buddha. Like a spirit, she had hovered around Ginkakuji Temple with its silver-plastered walls, had answered Shionen's massive bell calling to prayer, and climbed many steps up the cliff of Atowayama to Kiyomizudera Temple. With other pilgrims, she would chant her brown rosary, repeating again and again, "Eternal Buddha, save." Many times she asked herself what had gone wrong with this rambunctious child, so unlike her other four. The gods seemed to smile upon her oldest son, skillful in business, wise and true. Her next son, calm and strong. Her third, gracious and kind. Her only girl, flower-like and gentle. Then, 13 years after the birth of her fourth child, she had brought into their peaceful garden this child of fire, earthquake, and typhoon. From the beginning, he had been different from the rest. His little feet flew in pursuit of more mischief than she ever dreamed a child could think up. His voice, loud and clear, sometimes vibrated with mockery and scorn. Sometimes his whole body rocked in spasms of mirth. His sharp eyes went everywhere, searching, analyzing, missing nothing. Her typhoon boy would grow up to be either a very good boy or a very bad one. He never did anything halfway. As Ryu guided her youngest toward the temple, she may well have recalled that it was not only his father and herself who had failed their problem child. They had counted heavily upon school teachers to reform him. The ideals of conduct for students as set forth in the Imperial Rescript on Education were quite clear. Bear yourself in modesty and moderation. Extend your benevolence to all. Pursue learning, develop intellectual faculties, and perfect moral powers. Furthermore, advance the public good and observe the laws. Yet, the great Rescript could no more control the tempestuous waywardness of Ryu's typhoon boy than could a cloud of pink cherry blossoms block the path of a tornado about to swoop down upon the island of Nippon. In despair, one of the teachers finally appealed to his parents. "If only you would discipline your son Shiro! Can you do nothing with your child? Somehow he gets his lessons. If only he studied the way he plays baseball, we might have a genius." During Shiro's first year at the 3rd Kyoto Prefectural Middle School, the principal called at the Kano home. As he faced the distraught parents, his words were few, and he reached his climax with a stunning indictment. "We can no longer have your son Shiro in our school. We regret this action, but it is a necessity." The public schools had cast him out. What now? At last, the Kanos turned to an old friend, Mr. Nagasaki, a groceryman, who took Shiro into his home and hired him as an entry-level clerk. Yet the Kyoto grocer eventually had to face the Kano family in frustration. "I can do no more with him," he declared. "I have tried so often, but after 2 years I give up. I hope to reform him, but complaints from shopkeepers and the books stacked in every corner of his room make me guess that the old habit still has control of him." Books! More books than his wages and your allowance could purchase! Shiro's former employer turned on his heel and fled. Immediately, Katsuzo, the oldest son, took over. He burst into the house. "Shiro, where is that young rogue? He has disgraced us. What have we done to be punished by the gods like this?" He grabbed Shiro's shoulder and looked straight at him. "I want you to make a list of every store where you took even one book without paying. Please, for the family honor and the favor of the gods, tell me everything. Tomorrow you and I are going to visit each store and pay back what is owed. Tell me about all the other articles too, and where they came from." You don't say no to people like Shiro Kano, who was managing director of the department store, the Watanabe Shoten Limited of Kyoto, Japan. Shiro could not face up to the ordeal of being marched by his oldest brother from store to make things right with all the merchants he had wronged. And how could he possibly remember all the things he had brought home in 5 years? The family had apparently failed with their youngest son. The Japanese imperial rescript on education and the training of the schools had left Shiro cold. The family friend Nagasaki had cast him out in complete frustration. The crisis had come, not only for the family, but for the young delinquent as well. 12 years later, Shiro Kano shared the quest of his soul after the true God. When I was 15 years old, I was a problem child in my community. One evening, I was sitting on the porch of my home thinking over my future. I suddenly realized how bad my conduct was, and I was ashamed of it. In the schools, I was taught what a Japanese should be like, but I had no power to do what I should do and to be what I should be. Through books and papers over the radio, I began to learn about different religious experiences, and I wanted to understand spiritual things. Of course, I was too young to find out for myself, so I went to my mother. "Mother, I know in your eyes I am not good, but I want to be good. Are you going to Otera tonight?" "Shiro, what do you mean?" She was pleasantly surprised. "Yes, I'm going tonight. What do you want to know?" "Mother, I want to go to Otera with you." I began to cry and continued, "I want to be good. Will Hotoke-sama save me?" Buddha. My mother said nothing, but only nodded. That night I went to Otero with my mother. It was the first time in my life to step inside a religious building. Of course, I was a stranger, so I followed my mother, doing everything she did. At 7 o'clock, the people gathered before the great image of Hotoke-sama, Buddha. In front of him were many large lighted candles and countless ornaments and decorations. Incense was burning, and the smoke drifted upward and away slowly. The atmosphere was perfect for putting a person in a religious mood. I felt that the image of Hotoke-sama might be a living one, and I worshipped him. Soon a priest appeared, dressed in a purple robe and a golden scarf, followed by 3 assistants wearing red robes. He sat against the image holding a fan. At first they bowed their heads solemnly before the image and worshipped it, and then they began to read the prayer book. Some of the Buddhist worshippers who knew the chant joined them. Others shut their eyes and listened. It was all very strange to me, and I could not understand what the priest was saying about salvation through Hotoke-sama. Frankly, I said to my mother, "I do not know what the priest is saying before the image of Hotoke-sama." The stories are impossible to believe. If what he said is true, the world was much better thousands of years ago than now, I cried. Shiro, you do not need to worry and think like that. You shall understand soon what he preaches, she said. Let us attend Otera every night until you understand. I knew her health was very poor, and to go to Otera every night to help secure her son's salvation was a very great effort for her. From that night on, I began a pilgrimage with my gracious mother and went every night for 3 months. Gradually, I understood what the priest emphasized. He believed that people existed before this present life. Suffering in this life is caused by the way they had lived in their former lives. If they were suffering in this present life, they had not been very good in their former lives. So, I concluded that according to this doctrine, a disobedient and thieving boy like me would have been a public enemy number 1 in my former life. This teaching is pessimistic, I thought. I want to be good, but this religion doesn't teach me how. It offers nothing for the present life. So, I quit. Evidently, Shiro's worship of the great Buddha could not help him overcome the little impulses that made his fingers go astray. At least he lifted more than one bronze god from the altar in the temple, and more than one pilgrim walked home shoeless because Shiro could not resist stealing some of the shoes left outside the temple entrance by unsuspecting worshippers of the great Buddha. His heart still unsatisfied, the questing teen sought to purge his soul at the altar of Shinto. One morning, I got up early and went to Jinja, the Shinto shrine. It was clean, undecorated, and surrounded by forests. Everyone could feel the purity of such a spiritual environment. According to the custom, I knelt and worshipped the souls of Japanese ancestors and the soul of the universe. That was it. But neither Buddhism nor Shintoism, the 2 main religions of Japan, could give me what I was seeking. I went back on religion altogether and returned to the old life. In deepening despair, Shiro approached his mother again. How can the gods answer, mother? They have no eyes to see, no ears to hear. I bring some of them home from the temples. They are no different than a game or a book. You can't play with them or read them. Why go to the temple? What is there? Worship Hotoke-sama, the priest says, and go to paradise. Where is paradise? Where is Tokyo? I know that better.